Hello everyone, I'm the Enforcer, and welcome back to the breaking news. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and support us on Patreon, link in the description below. Border tensions in between Belarus and Poland have been rising recently, with a large amount of Wagner troops, spanning assumedly in the thousands, beginning to take positions along the Polish border. According to the information that has been found, not only has that buildup been happening, but two helicopters, a Belarusian Mi-8 and a Belarusian Mi-24, just flew over the border nearly 48 hours ago, traveling nearly 3.5 kilometers inside of Poland, and then turning around and flying back out. When that original story came out with the picture evidence, the Polish government immediately refuted the claims and said that the pictures had been taken from citizens of that village observing these helicopters flying north to south along the border. However, as time passed, more videos and pictures came out proving that these helicopters had not just flown into the area around the border, but had in fact flown almost 3.5 kilometers inside of Poland before turning around and flying back out. This massive violation of national sovereignty and the immediate discovery of the truth of these claims by the Polish government led to a very swift and very strict response, with additional thousands of soldiers being dedicated to the border region in between Poland and Belarus and the provision of anti-air units. Some of the first that we've seen on the border since the rising of tensions in 2019 in between Poland and Belarus due to the generally artificially produced migrant crisis where Syrian refugees that had been brought into Belarus on fake vacation packages were forced to go to the border and then were forced by Belarusian border guards to attempt a crossing to try and infiltrate Poland, which of course was viewed as a violation of national sovereignty by the Poles, leading to an armed standoff in 2019 and almost all the way up until the present day. Of course, with the Wagner troops' presence in the area, this has gone from a migrant crisis to a military conflict, or more so, the risk of military conflict in the escalations that follow. The Polish have made a very strict statement today, coming from a general of the Polish army, Marek Sokolowski, who said that the helicopters are armed and ready to fight. There are very experienced pilots here. There are pilots who have used onboard weapons and missiles with me in Afghanistan and Iraq. According to these statements, it appears that the Polish government is making the stance that any further border incursions by the Belarusians will be met immediately with force, and if any aircraft begin to cross the border once more, they will be shot down without delay. Once they cross the border, they will be a target for Polish army forces and their helicopters, or the Polish Air Force with their aircraft. This is, of course, a bit of a serious escalation to the entire affair, and it is something that is starting to draw the Western world and the Russians closer to war than we ever have been before. The United States is continuing to try and delay the rising of tensions, or to at least try and not fuel the flames by making a statement that Article 5 is not going to be invoked, and has not been invoked yet. According to the State Department and Matthew Miller during a press briefing earlier, quote unquote, there is a process for NATO countries to invoke Article 5. We are not currently in such a situation. Nevertheless, it does clearly appear that that situation is beginning to form on the Polish border area, and while no one has been killed and no Polish military assets have been attacked, the border incursion is one of a kind and something that we've never seen before. And this isn't the only place that border incursions are beginning to happen by Russian armed forces or Belarusian armed forces, as we'll see in Romania. Romania has been a little bit of a quiet front, a little bit of a sideshow as far as the rising tensions in between the West and Russia have gone, but nevertheless, things have been occurring in this area. A Romanian ship was moderately damaged after mooring at the Ukrainian port of Renai on the Ukrainian-controlled side of the Danube River, which is probably the closest the Russians have ever come to directly attacking and destroying a NATO ship or a NATO asset. However, we see that they are once again trying to escalate the conflict as much as possible and to bring in the Western world, as according to the mayor of a Romanian city near the Ukrainian town of Ismail, of course on the Romanian side and inside of the nation of Romania, he stated that Russian drones on their attack on the port of Ismail had flown directly overhead. According to his direct statement, the windows of the houses of the village were shattered by the explosions over the Danube shore caused by the Russian drones. The Romanian Ministry of Defense denies this, although there's physical evidence of the windows being blown out. And citizens also say that the drones fell in the woods, so far as there is no confirmation of this alleged occurrence, however, but nevertheless, according to the mayor of this village, He said that Russian drones had not just flown into Ismail, and of course the subsequent explosions caused damage to his village, but these drones actually flew overhead, and their attack path went directly over Romanian airspace and Romanian territory. Once again, a similar border incursion to what we're seeing in Poland, but so far this one has been on the back burner. And we're going to have to wait and see what the Western response to continued border incursions like this will be. Of course, at the moment, we haven't seen any kind of a real violent response or a militant response, but we have seen that the buildup of forces has become an actuality. We're seeing that on the Polish border, and we're somewhat seeing that in Romania, although that's been a lot slower and more quiet of a process over the course of this entire war so far. But one thing is for certain, the Russians are getting very familiar with what drone warfare and the damage that it causes leads to, as citizens in Moscow today spotted a drone flying over the city, and it appears that their reaction to the drone was uncouth, to say the least. Here's the clip. You see a mass of citizens running about as fast as they can from the area where the drone was spotted. It was later found out that this drone was actually one being operated by the Russian government for propaganda reasons to try and film the streets. So it appears that the Russians, of course, are greatly panicked about drones flying in the area and are very scared of the kind of damage and consequences that drones may bring, which is very ironic considering that they appear to be the #1 terrorists as far as drone warfare is conducted, mercilessly attacking Ukrainian citizens with Shahed 136s directly, among many other kinds of drones and missiles. But they do have a reason to be scared. Ukrainian attacks and Ukrainian partisan attacks appear to be very effective, even right outside of the city of Moscow. As we saw near the village of Kolomna today, a massive explosion occurred in a small village. This was an oxygen battery warehouse, and we can see the massive plume of smoke billowing from the warehouse after it was destroyed by some unknown origin. Of course, this kind of damage is serious and, of course, causes a massive amount of repercussions for the Russian civil economy, or the civil sphere, and also the military sphere as well, once again ensuring that the Russians will be most likely running short of supplies before this war effort ends in their own timetable, and also something that reminds the Russians that they are not safe wherever they are at this point in the war. Of course, the Ukrainians have been dealing with attacks like these ever since around the first days of the war, and especially since the introduction of the Iranian Shahed that started to arrive in Russia around the later part of last year. We're starting to see that they're reacting to this, and the Ukrainians are starting to send their own drones into Russia, and it appears that their attacks and damages are quite serious. Of course, we can't confirm if that oxygen battery fire was caused by a Ukrainian drone. It may have actually been a partisan attack or anti-Putin partisans that conducted the attack, but nevertheless, we can see that pandemonium is beginning to increase inside of Russia just due to the small amount of drone attacks that have been committed by the Ukrainians over the past few months. Moving on from that and into the city of Kyiv, we also heard some interesting news about the F-16s. Apparently, training for F-16s will be beginning later this month, according to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. At the moment, we do not understand where these trainings will occur or what variants of the F-16s will be involved in this training, but nevertheless, it is amazing to hear that they finally will be receiving training on the F-16. The F-16 is perceived by the public to be a war-changing vehicle, one that can actually start to change the frontline affairs and also give the massive amount of support that Ukrainian ground forces need to successfully culminate their offensives in the southern front around the Zaporizhzhia area. That, of course, is all yet to be seen. The F-16 is an amazing aircraft with capabilities that far exceed any of the Russians' combat capabilities as far as their air force is concerned, but we will be waiting and seeing when these are introduced, what kind of effect and what kind of damage they'll be having on the Russian army, and of course, if they'll be able to help the war end sooner. Of course, at the same time, things are still going on in the southern front as they have been, and the humanitarian crisis of the destruction of the Novokhovka Dam is something that has kind of disappeared into the foreground, considering that many major things have happened since then, and have kind of trumped it in terms of importance or in terms of the amount of public attention that have been put onto these serious instances. Still, the Novokhovka Dam is completely destroyed, and probably will not be rebuilt until long after the war ends. Of course, the damage that this has caused to the surrounding area is incredibly severe, and a drone took some video from the Ukrainian side near Kozatsky today showing what kind of damage had been caused to the dam itself and also the emptying of the reservoir further upstream. The area that we're looking at right now is directly along the actual Novokakhovka Dam. The dam is just off right of the screen. This area here, this grassy outcropping that juts out into the now empty reservoir, is the town of Kakhovka. Novokakhovka is just right off screen. As the drone looks over the reservoir, we can see that the entire thing is empty. Around 13 meters of water deep was inside of this entire reservoir, and now the entire thing sits empty. We can also see the very little remains of the Novokakhovka Dam itself, and based off of the destruction of these remains, we can tell that the destruction of the dam was complete and incredibly large, at least the explosives that were used. But further examination cannot happen at the moment. Ukrainian forces control the northern side near the village of Kazatsky, and just on the southern side that you're looking at the top of the screen, that is controlled by Russian forces. And the ability for investigators to get into the middle of no man's land on an active front line and to try and truly inspect the extent of damages that were caused to the Novokakhovka Dam and the exact causes will not happen until the end of the war. That is guaranteed. It is just too dangerous for anyone to get there at the moment, and it will most likely take a long amount of time before that area is stabilized and taken under Ukrainian control. But nevertheless, the damage was severe, and the reservoir, all the way from Zaporizhia to Novokakhovka itself, has been completely emptied of almost all water, and the only thing that remains is the original channels that the Dnipro River traveled down before the dams were even built. But of course, that is all of the major news of today, of course, from Western escalation, or more so Belarusian escalation and the Polish response to that escalation, all the way to the drone flying over Moscow and the Novokakhovka Dam and the subsequent damage that was caused after the attack on June 6th. That is all of the news we have today. I thank you all so much once again for watching, and if y'all did enjoy, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, as these kinds of videos run nearly every single day of the week. Almost 7 days a week, around the same time every day. You can also count on us to run live streams 6 days a week at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, covering the past 24 hours of the war in picture and video evidence, and also addressing a lot of the questions that many of y'all have as the war continues to progress. But nevertheless, thank you all so much once again for watching, and I will see you all in the next one.